when I go on paranormal investigations, I feel like, and there is a dead person, doesn't matter if they're good or bad, I feel sick to my stomach. Like, I'll feel that before I consciously can understand how they've died. So that goes before that. And they say, your stomach is your second brain. And I think it is very responsive, than maybe even more so than your actual brain. It's got all that bacteria, good and bad, and I think that is also a kind of consciousness as well, which is why it is important to treat your stomach good. Fiber, prebiotics, probiotics, balancing of the pH, detoxes, and all this sort of hippie stuff, as you might think of it like that. But the idea is it's really important to treat specifically your stomach well, because it actually does what I would say it thinks. It is your subconscious brain, that's the way I would look at it. So it's important to fortify the stomach. But that's like this, that's what the beginnings of the paranormal information for me are. It's just absolutely overwhelming gut feelings, and I have a gut feeling. We all heard that saying. That means that you literally feel that emotion in your stomach, not in your heart or in your brain, but your stomach, because your stomach registers this information before even your brain, and that's very true for me. So then, as you can imagine, another example would be, some of these can morph into one another. For the example right now is that I was having, imagining that I was having a conversation with this guy, and he was yelling. He was very delusional, and he was telling me that he wasn't on drugs anymore, but that he's lost his mind and he doesn't have anything. I don't have any other option. So then it kind of went blank in my mind for a second. And then I felt the physical pain of him hanging himself, like it happened to me. So it switched gears, really, my perception. And it's not so much the physical pain that sucks, but it's the emotional. I perceive these people as ghosts. And so obviously to me that means that them in many circumstances, them taking their life, it wasn't the right thing for them to do. They could have stayed here, and they could have, fought, and it would have meant so much more to them personally elevating themselves. But instead they've done this thing where they obviously cut their own life. Obviously symbolic with ropes, and that's awful. I really feel affected by that one still. I mean, it's just that like learning magic, that was the one I learned to deal with as far as perception goes, like having to do grounding, because it's very important for me to not take this energy in as my own, and believe that it's me, because that was probably a problem when I was younger. But there's all these different ways that people can I will say too, jumping off a bridge is not a good, easy way to die. It's not going to go right away, and that was awful. Watching that happen as a picture, and then that, and it's weird because I guess to kind of elaborate, what experiencing their death is really almost, as I mentioned, where they try to have conversations with me first, or they just yell at me and they start acting crazy, and crying and whatever made them emotionally unhinged, and then it switches to me feeling that way. And then I feel like whatever kind of the aftermaths of that sort of happen, like dying instantly in a whatever, a plane crash, and then not being able to figure out where your body is. So there's this, you're conscious and alive 1 minute, and the next minute you're searching for your body that is not really going to resemble body. That's the thing too as well. Many dead do attend their own funerals because they've just died and this is closure for them. So that's kind of like, then a lot of the dead can move on, but if there's not a body or it's very sudden, they can look for that, and if there's nothing there, I mean, that's an awful way to really feel for me. So I do not like that at all, but it does happen, and then I do grounding techniques to deal with that. To put it in its place, in perspective of that's not my decision. It's not what I did. It's not my life. It's not me presently. And that really does work. These kinds of basic things that might sound a little bit more right-hand path, I think they're very important to understanding the occult and understanding yourself before you really get into this for whatever reason. I was drawn to it because of this, these experiences. Now, what I would like to also say is that I don't really know. I believe all this at once, and then at the same time, nothing. It's just that I think by leaving my imagination open enough to not shut my imagination off, and I remain open to that, then I can still be open to experience that. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's conscious? Does it mean that it's God? Does it mean that it's Satan? Or gods? I don't know. I do not know. But I find the experience valuable, and also very tied to, my animal sense of self, where this is something, these understandings that I'm talking about, they came way before my ancestors' abilities to speak and these things. This is body language and mental communication 101 type of stuff that, I imagine that a person is talking to me, but what they're really doing is it's sadness or fear, regret, happiness, longing, and it's just being articulated for my mind to process, and so it's just a picture. I really don't know, and that's also part of too when I work with the dead. I don't tell them what to believe, or I don't say, I think that I might be like a pagan and a Satanist. I just want people to be able to become their own best versions of themselves, whether they're dead or alive. Same thing with the living. Some of my friends don't even know that I'm an occultist or a Satanist. I've been friends with this one woman a little bit, maybe about a month, in real life. And so I'm working with her, trying to get her to believe in herself. I don't care what she wants to call it. It doesn't affect me. And if people want to call it, yeah, like God or Jesus, or probably very few people want to see it in a satanic way, but that's fine. Or the old gods. It really is a huge part of people taking this into their own identity and calling it whatever. And I certainly don't want to tell people what to believe, and who am I to say what's real and what's not? But anyway, I'll probably end here, and that'll be my final part. Those are the 4 ways that I seem to experience this psychic phenomenon, or be able to describe it. So when people say, "What's that like?" Well, this is kind of me trying to describe it, and people think that I'm nuts, because they're like, I'll say, "Hey, this guy that I'm talking to, he said this," and they're like, "Well, you weren't talking to somebody." But I was on the astral plane, and it happens very fast, so I don't need reality. I'm not bound, my mentalness is not bound by the physical plane. So keep your imagination open, ground yourself, and no matter what you believe, if you interact with people, try to get them to, be their own best, highest versions of themselves. And that's the real reward in all this anyway. So I'll see you guys later. Take care.